kuti titonge tine hama dzakafa, tine vanhu vakarara kuMozambique, tine vanhu vakarara kuZambia, tine vanhu vakarara in the countryside, kuti tisvike pakuzvitonga. Mnangagwa is a leader wevanhu ivavo as we speak, and we are not going to budge.
Mnangagwa akabvutira mudhara wake, Mugabe akafa akatsamwa, abvutirwa kudzinga mudhara. Azviitwe chipini munyika. Ndosaka muchiona Mnangagwa atatarika nenyika nokuti wakagumbura mudhara wake. Ini ndakasirwa naSave. Save vasirwa naNdabaningi. Ndabaningi apuwa naMwari.
Zimbabwe went to an election to vote for a president, a councillor, and a legislator. Those elections have come to an end. President Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa was last week inaugurated into office. He took an oath of office to save and protect the people of Zimbabwe, to uphold the constitution. But in this path, those who took part in the elections have dismissed those elections as a shame and a farce. There also has been questions that have been thrown by the SADC Observer Mission, the AU Observer Mission, EU Observer Mission, among others. Now we go back to the source. We talk to all the candidates, especially who participated in the presidential election, to hear the so what of that election. Did it meet their standards? Will Zimbabwe's future dreams be realized because of this fight in the electoral results and the electoral process? Now this is the Free Talk in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. And this week I'm joined by one of the presidential candidates, and we talk about this election. Join me after this break. Now, welcome back to the Free Talk in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom. I'm your host, as usual, Dara B. And in studio, I'm going to be joined by Engineer Wilbert Mubaiwa, the President of the National People's Congress, NPC. He got 1.2% of the vote. 58,000 people stepped up and voted for him. He was third in line after The winner, Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, now president. Nelson Chamisa of the Triple C, who believes the election was stolen, and him with 58,000 votes. Welcome to the Free Talk. Now, I just want us to talk about the election. How did you see this election that you contested in as a presidential candidate?
Our main objective going into the election was threefold. The first was to see how it actually happens, what happens on the ground, what things produce negative sentiments in people and in our leaders. That was the first. The second one was to launch ourselves, and in particular myself as a potential president and candidate. The third one was purely our own. We wanted to see who among our people that we had talked to over the last 2 years before we were formed would make leaders, or would be able to go out and look for other leaders. Who are the leaders among us? And we think we managed to achieve. The other one had nothing to do, the other objective had nothing to do with ourselves. It had something to do with the general appearance of the country. We had hoped that we would get a percentage that would help, for example, the next person, who is Chamisa in this case, to increase his vote to a substantial level. I personally wanted to go to 3% as an objective, minimum, and was hoping that the rest of the guys would get at least 1% each, which would have taken us to about 12%, 11%, 12%. That's the only one that we didn't achieve, that objective of 3%. We saw it as a good field. Yes, it's unfair. It will never be fair. No matter how much you reform the electoral laws, the power of incumbents makes any law irrelevant at a given point. It will depend on the behavior of the person in charge. So we never worry about that. The second one was how to see how things happen and so forth. We were surprised ourselves that our posters in particular were not removed particularly by ZANU-PF. They were removed by other opposition parties, and which we thought was very negative to the development of democracy, because opposition parties should help each other to achieve higher levels so that collectively we can get to 50%, because that's the only way we can cause change. Our collective performances must be above 50. For me, 54, 56 would be a good performance collectively by the opposition, but our posters were being removed by other opposition members, which was a very sad development. But we also discovered that people are still being told that this one is sponsored by the West. Someone thought we were being sponsored by West. We were not sponsored by anyone, by the way. That's why we couldn't hold any rally, although it was also strategic not to hold any rally. We wanted to see how much we could go by just talking to people without gathering them at a given point. And we are pleased with what happened. We are pleased with the result, because by simply talking to people in their houses, we were able to achieve this 1.2%. But we know if we had managed to hold a rally in Bulawayo or Harare, Mutare and Gweru, which was the original objective, we know we could have achieved more, but we didn't, largely because of resources and largely because of advice that we also received that it wasn't necessary. So generally it was very bad. We had the problem of fires in 3 areas, especially in Marsh West, where some of the people campaigning for us were actually told, don't do this, we'll arrest you, we'll do this. Fortunately, they were very courageous, and we got some of our largest votes from Orongwe. We also had one of our members cut. He was injured. Some people just saw his car with the posters, and they decided to remove them. When he challenged them, he was cut, a very deep cut. Fortunately for us, there were some CID guys who were passing by. This was in Chinoy. And they quickly arrested that guy. He was taken to court. Within 2 days, he had been tried and was jailed for 6 months. So we were pleased at that particular point with the reaction of the law enforcement agents, even though I know they were not on duty. They were passing by and had the guts to arrest this guy and made sure he went to court. Generally, that's what we saw. We were not worried about the playing field because we know at any given point, as long as you're not in government, it will never be fair.
You say you're not worried about the playing field, but is this first thing that you talk about an issue of incumbents?
It is an issue of incumbents. That's why I said we worry about issues of incumbents. Those are the ones that will always affect you. And first, for me, I thought it's an issue of incumbents. Because if you're an organization like that, I don't know how officially registered it was, maybe as an NGO or whatever. If any NGO, because we know NGOs are supposed to operate within a given framework, and if one supposedly is working outside that framework, then it raises questions as to who owns them. That's when you then believe it's as a result of incumbents. And that's what we concluded. It did affect us here and there. But people themselves were saying, no, we are not worried. So I still bring back the question back to us. What is it that we should do as opposition to make sure that we achieve?
Let's talk about the way forward later, but just let's probe the election first. What is your view in the report that the SADC Observer Mission tabled, the preliminary report, which said that this election failed to meet even the standards of the Zimbabwean Constitution and the SADC principles and guidelines on democratic...
I do agree with them to a certain extent. I agree with them when they say it wasn't free and fair. Because of incumbents itself, because of conditions that are, especially at the beginning. If you remember, some rallies were stopped. Even though we didn't have a rally, but we could see some rallies were stopped. That alone makes the freeness questionable and the fairness questionable, even if it was just one incident that we realized. I just have a problem when they talked about the Patriotic Act and so forth. I thought they were going into the laws of Zimbabwe. I thought they were supposed to come and observe the election itself and leave the laws of Zimbabwe as they are, because those are what define our sovereignty. So you cannot come and review our laws. You should come and observe the elections. I thought that's where it went out.
The SADC was taking it from the point where, because they were observers, they needed to talk to Zimbabweans to understand certain things. And Zimbabweans could not talk to them because they were afraid of being arrested using the Patriotic Act, because they come from a foreign land. This is from the explanation.
Yeah, but does it give you the authority, if you're an observer, to actually question the validity of a law of a country? It doesn't.
If it then infringes, so it infringes on the principles and guidelines of SADC, which Zimbabwe is a signatory to.
Yeah, but I didn't see if it infringes, especially within an election. I think the Patriotic Act is more relevant outside an election framework, because what it is saying, I'll give you an example. If you go out or give a press conference and then call for sanctions to be imposed on your country, then that's where the Patriotic Act comes. If you're going to call for a particular action to be undertaken by a foreign power on your own country. I thought that's where it was. And it has always been like that, even though it wasn't called the Patriotic Act. When you look at what is in the Patriotic Act, it has existed even before.
We are talking about people who call for a press conference and call for sanctions on their own country. What happens to those who act in a manner that calls for sanctions against our country? What happens to them?
Yeah, they are also affected. That's what people are failing to see. In fact, when we argue, even in Parliament, and in terms of its implementation, we should also talk about those people who favor the patriotic because they think it doesn't cover them. It also covers them. We should then say the law is being applied selectively, because you should also be arrested or censured under the Patriotic Act.
Like, for instance, those people who sent out fires when for us as a country to be accepted in a family of nations, we should hold free and fair elections, right? What happens to those people under the Patriotic Act? Because those actions,
if you know them, you can actually censure them or prosecute them. But the problem, as we said with FAS, you don't know its origins. You don't know who created it. But we are supposing, all of us, that it existed because of the power of incumbents. Let's say it has nothing to do with the ZANU-PF or the government, but they found its operations favorable to them. They then cast their eye aside and said, let's leave them. You can criticize them to say, as a government, you should have done something. But you can't hold them accountable because you're not sure, you don't know whether they are the ones who formed it. And we have no proof. And I think if they are smart, they wouldn't even make sure their name is seen anywhere around that organization. So,
but it is.
It's not written all over it. When you go to their document that forms it, it's not there. Because that's your starting point. If I'm going to arrest you for fraud and so forth in your company, and I suspect you are part of Serenia Trust, but your name does not appear in any document and in any meeting, we cannot arrest you. Even if you could influence, that happens at our private meetings, you cannot be arrested. That's how the mafia works.
Are you saying ZANU-PF is the mafia?
I am saying you can call it that because if it is involved, only if it is involved, because we don't know. We are all assuming it is. So you can call it a mafia, but I am saying...
But if, how do you say it's not involved when you say it? When your campaign team was on the campaign road, it was stopped from campaigning so that it favors ZANU-PF.
No, we don't know whether it was meant to favor ZANU-PF. It could have been meant to favor any other party other than ZANU-PF, because they never said, stop, we want ZANU-PF to win. They say, stop. They just stopped us.
They have put adverts, especially after the results were announced. They put adverts that they are proud to be associated with ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF has not denied them. During the international trade fair in Mubaiwa, they had a stand there, and it was written that they support ZANU-PF, and the president actually visited their stand.
Yeah, but it doesn't make ZANU-PF responsible for their actions.
Are you defending ZANU-PF?
I'm not defending. What I'm saying is, if I support you, can we automatically say you are responsible for my actions wherever I am? You see, this is where the law is a bit tricky. You get the point? I support you, and I publicly say so. And I commit a crime, whatever the crime is, maybe related to what you do. You cannot be arrested because you cannot be held responsible for my own actions.
But you can be associated.
You can be associated. That's the furthest you can go, to associate that action with you. Especially if the action that I have taken is also very similar to some of the actions that you take. Yeah, but all I'm saying is that's the furthest you can go.
But just moments ago you said you don't know if the vote was their actions were supposed to benefit ZANU-PF.
We don't know because at that time they never said so. They are only coming out now.
They said before at the international trade fair. That was way before election. They've always pronounced themselves as a...
Yeah, but if I am a criminal, let me take you back to the gold ring. If I am a criminal and I support ZANU-PF, what's the difference between ZANU-PF and a FAS and an individual who supports ZANU-PF and commits crimes? You can never. You see, I want to think beyond the emotional. I want to think beyond the activist. If I have to solve the problems of this country, I must not learn to take distractions because they will distract me.
The president of FAS was a candidate. ZANU-PF.
Yes, never mind. What I'm saying is...
How do you, President, how do you employ as you're a chairperson of a leading bank, right? How do you employ a criminal as your manager and then use a non-criminal? I'm not saying FAS is a criminal, I'm saying, how do you employ a non-criminal?
No, you can't create. You can't employ a non-criminal. But what
then distance yourself, because you say they stole, but they were not part of this company.
Yeah, but you see, FARs are people who support a certain idea, and that idea happens to be that of ZANU-PF. It doesn't make them criminals or ZANU-PF. No, they are just like any other supporter in Guruwe who supports ZANU-PF and commits acts in the name of ZANU-PF. If they are caught committing an irregular act, which is considered a criminal, you must arrest. You see, the way I look at the country is if we become activists in nature and associate things that cannot be associated on the ground in real terms, you are losing track. And that's what they want you to do. Don't lose track. That's what I'm saying.
But if it quacks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, it must be a duck, President.
Yeah, that's the normal statement that people say. Sometimes it is not a duck. It must be a person who wants you to run away from the actual ducks and you follow the wrong shadow. We have seen it in a lot of movies, in a lot of real life. I don't think it's a statement that applies 100%, that if it quakes like a duck and so forth. We know people who have appeared as ghosts when they are real people in order to frighten people. They make themselves ghosts during the night, right? And the people are frightened to go to a certain area because they are ghosts. While it's an area where they are digging gold illegally or are doing illegal activities. So I want to think outside the box and say, yes, even if I know, just like the NGOs, even if I know generally they favor opposition, if I'm going to be the president, I should not be worried about them. And if I know there is an organization, it could be a trade union, it could be FARs, and they support ZANU-PF, I should not be worried about them. I worry about them in the context that they are part of the broad strategy of ZANU-PF. I worry about what I should do to defeat ZANU-PF, no matter how many organizations that it forms, even if it forms 3 organizations that are similar to FARs, operate like FARs. You see, the idea in the world of business and deals is not to focus on someone's weakness and even talk about it, because they will strengthen it and become better. I want to, because it's a weakness to ZANU-PF, which we can work on. And if I focus on it and I talk to it publicly, right, I'm making ZANU-PF change their ways. So they will become strong. I don't want to talk about a weakness of my opponent. I want to keep silent about it. They think I don't know it. That way I can quickly craft my own ways of going around that weakness. Or create an organization that counters that organization. That's the best that you can do, actually. And then it operates in a very humane way, although it's countering. Don't focus on the weakness of your opponent. Focus on his strength. Don't even talk about what you think are his strengths. Don't even worry about them. Worry about what you should do to go around them. Let people deduce by themselves that this action by this guy is meant to counter this. This action by this guy is going. Let that come from the analysts. Don't talk about what you want to do. Don't talk about ZANU-PF's weaknesses or horribleness, because they will correct it. And what do you do after that? You go home and sit and say, I no longer want to be president because what I was fighting against has been corrected. No, leave it.
Do you think after the reports from SADC, from AU, from the EU, Zimbabwe is in a space of being able to move forward after this inauguration that we have seen just happening?
It makes their movement difficult, but trust me, they will move. But they might be slowed down, because this is a hullabaloo that will pass. A report by observers, no matter how adverse it is, will last not more than 3 to 4 months in the minds of the voters. In the minds of the international community, it may last longer. The moment it dies down, every country there has got interest in Zimbabwe. Every individual, including Mumba, probably is interested. He will continue to come here and benefit in that same environment that he says is bad. So they will move, but they will be slowed down for a while. What is important is not so much what the observers said. What is important is what we do as opposition parties to count, because I believe we are responsible for our failure to change this. Because the only way to change this country or to change the structure of the vote in the country is to take supporters from ZANU-PF. You cannot win without taking a supporter from ZANU-PF.
Do they have the supporters, given that they induce fear, as you say?
No, they do have supporters. Even if they're induced by fear, they support them. Make sure that even if they're induced by fear, they can come to you. Those are our strategies. Yeah, never mind. He married this guy because of his wealth. There is another guy who married a king's daughter, even though he's a commoner. What strategies did he use? That's what you must look at. He was a commoner, but he married a king's daughter. They induced fear. They can still go ahead and lose. Our focus should be on working together. But we were fighting each other more than we were fighting ZANU-PF.
How do you work together when you're competing against each other?
No, we can. If I discover, for example, like in my case, if I discover that Chamisa is very strong in a given area, let him go. Go there and campaign as a president, right? But maybe let it be the last place you visit, or don't even visit it. Just to hope the few that are in there who listen to your interview or read the newspaper about you and don't like Chamisa but they are opposition will vote for you. But don't go there to disrupt Chamisa's activities in an area that you know it's his stronghold, unless it's an urban area. An urban area is no one's stronghold. We could have done very well in Harare if we had held 2, 3, 4 rallies, but we didn't. This was in our program, but we couldn't for various reasons. One of them, I must admit here openly that we discovered we didn't have the leaders of the caliber that we thought we should have. And we knew this 6 months before the elections, that the people who came claiming to be leaders were not leaders.
Who are these people, President
Biden? Some of them were calling themselves our members. But I don't want to mention names because there are many of them. At first, I actually counted 97, but it came down to about 82. But some of them, I acted on them a week before the election. And the reason, I could have acted on them 8 months, 6 months before. But I said, if there are people like this, it's their nature. If it's a snake, it will remain a snake. If you give it time, it will kill more people. So I wanted to make sure they go out just before the elections so that they don't disrupt our activities for a longer period, or they don't influence some of our people. It was a strategy that we agreed here, 4 of us, to say, let's leave them go on, but let's work outside them without them knowing.
But if you don't mention names, how do people get confidence in the National People's Congress? Because so far...
That's where they should get the fact that we don't go and fight people individually and say he's like this, he's like this. That's where the confidence should come from, because we are not focused on people.
I understand that Morgan Komichi had approached your party to be part of your structures. Is that correct?
Correct and incorrect. Again, the same one of the people that we knew was working incorrectly. He had come to me and said, Morgan wants to talk to you. And he had gone to Morgan and said, Mubaiwa wants to talk to you. And so what I did when Morgan came here, I said, you wanted to talk to me. And he said, no, you wanted to talk to me. So it confirmed my fears that this person was lying, that so-and-so wants to talk to you. And he had done this for a very long time. And we had always known that he is lying. So I would always ask him, are you the one who called him or he called you? It was a question that was difficult for him to answer. So I knew. So when a meeting is arranged that way, nothing comes out of it, because you start, in my case, I distrusted the person. But Morgan Komichi, it was happening to him for the first time. He could probably have said, no, Mubaiwa is not a very good leader. He did not see the other guy. So even though I would have loved to work with anyone, at that time, it was not the point to continue talking to Morgan Komichi, because the guy who had put us together had lied about it. So you were working with a vacuum. And many instances like that did happen, where I was supposed to have spoken to more than 60 people who had expressed interest in talking to me. So I questioned it. I said, if 10 of them have come out to be false, Why should I believe the other ones? So I left them. Most of these I'm talking to them now. But as if I'm approaching them for the first time, and I'm approaching them myself. Some of them have looked for me. In fact, more have looked for me than those that I have approached. And that makes me happy.
There's been some news or question that has circled around you being able to get the 1.2%, 58,000 votes in this, outperforming political parties that have existed for a long time, like the National Constitutional Assembly, the MDCT. You outperformed this, and some believe that you are a creation of ZANU-PF, smoke and mirror.
Let's assume ZANU-PF had created us and we had gotten 9%. Do you think ZANU-PF would have won the election? No. It was going to be a hung presidential vote. ZANU-PF are not that stupid. They will not create someone to compete with them. This is something that is said in tired minds, in activist minds. That's why we have not gone forward. ZANU-PF has got very intelligent people in the background who advise them. They would never be advised to start a party that competes with them, because even if that party gets 0.2%, it will ensure that ZANU-PF does not get, it can ensure that ZANU-PF does not get 50+1. So they wouldn't do that. So to those people, I would say, this is the politics that I want to get us out of as a people. And look at everyone in the opposition as a positive contribution to the struggle to change the fortunes of this country. That's the starting. Start by trusting someone. And then as you talk to him, if you're an intelligent man, if you're a wise man, if you're a man given to be a leader, you'll see it on your first day or on your first meeting that this man is not genuine or this man is not serious. Most of the time, when I talk to the people that I've spoken with from various opposition parties, I have not discovered people who have been bought by ZANU-PF or are pro-ZANU-PF. I have seen people who are not politicians, but activists. And I think that's our weaknesses. Most of the people who masquerade as leaders are activists. But I've also discovered it is normal to have more activists than leaders. Even ZANU-PF has more activists than leaders. That's why if we are reasonable, it will be easier for us to get them onto our side. They are activists. The majority are activists. They follow where the language suits them. The leaders are very few. Even in ZANU-PF, they know that. Mugabe knew that. That's why in his mind, he did not see anyone who could take over from him.
Was he right?
He was right because he was using his own leadership model. And according to his model, he did not see someone who could carry it forward. But it could have been wrong, assuming his model was wrong, which I think it was. It was correct up to a certain point, maybe 60 to 70% right. But it was 30% wrong. So if you looked for a person who was exactly like him, he was never going to cover that 30% that I think was never in him.
I mean, given the movement of the country since 2017, where the former late President Robert Mugabe was removed from power, the way the country has moved, do you think Mugabe could have really been right that there's no leaders in this country?
Yes and no, because there's been a change in behavior, in both negatively and positively. There are things where they've changed, but they've taken a negative dimension. For example, during the time of Mugabe, there was, though not total, when you looked at people who commit crimes, and where names of people close to Mugabe had come out in papers and said this one is wrong, Mugabe acted faster and quicker, but sometimes by changing ministries, not necessarily by taking them out. That has not happened. We have seen a slowdown of action on people who are said to be not the right people or committing crimes. I don't believe I should fire someone because the newspaper have said he's bad. I believe I should carry out an investigation, either quietly or loudly. But if it is a person who is occupying a public office, I should make it a public investigation, a public inquiry, so that the newspaper knows that its information has been taken seriously. Even if you know from the start that it's false, by virtue of the information that you got before the report was published. Don't go out and say it's false. Do something to prove that it's false. And it's always some kind of an inquiry. Even just to stand down someone for 6 months, if your inquiry is going to take 6 months, put him down for that period. Stand him down for that period so that you can investigate. Because what we need is confidence, both from our own people and from investors. So the only way to get confidence coming back to our people and to people who want to work with us is to make sure that we investigate any potential misrule, misgovernance, misdeed. That's the only way. I think they've done well in certain areas. For example, when we look at what they've done completing Wange, which was an old project, that's very good. But I don't take the Bridge Harare Road as being a good project. It is a good project, but a bad one. A good project in the sense that it must be done. We need a road that functions. But a bad project in the sense that we are using our internal resources, very little resources, to do a road that can be done by an international investor, because it is an appeal to international investors. Any project that is potentially could appeal to international investors, I would leave it to international investors.
Are you saying we have no capacity to build our own country?
We don't. No country has. That's why even America uses PPPs. That's why even Britain uses PPPs. There is no government in the world that has the capacity to do public infrastructure on its own without bringing in the private sector. This is known. It's not just us. It's every country, even the most developed. It relies on the involvement of the private sector to make sure that there is sufficient. Why is it like that? Because social services are very demanding. Roads that are uneconomic, but very good for uneconomic to the private investor, but very economic to the country, right? Should be done by government. That's why government should focus. Like when you look at our farms, government should focus on those roads. Energy in our farms, roads in our farms. Look at our towns. Government should focus on our towns because towns are never lucrative for investment in terms of the roads and so forth by an international investor. Because you need to get your money back. Your tolls must be able to give you that. And how do you ensure, like Harare, you create roads where you can actually toll? You can't. And those are the roads where the international investor or the local investor with his own money cannot invest for various reasons. That's when you take them to your national roads. The road going to Mozambique, to Zambia, to Botswana, to South Africa, and so forth. Put international, so that your little resources, you can put them in your farms. You can put them in your cities, so that you don't get our roads.
But just 2 minutes ago, President Bayo, you said that ZANU-PF has very intelligent people who advise them, and you are telling me that
no, not who advise them, but remember we are talking about politics, not development.
So they are just interested in politics.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Their interest is in politics. Their interest is in staying in power, keeping control.
So once they
but
get
why
the power,
I've said there's
once
been
they get the power, they don't know what to do with it. Is that what you're saying?
They celebrate longer than they should. They celebrate for 5 years when the next election comes. And they do the same process. Maybe they celebrate for a month, for 2. Right now, they're still celebrating. And we also mourn for too long. We mourn for 5 years. And stop planning for the election coming in 5 years. So we have got different faults, but with the same results for ourselves and for ZANU. For us, we might never get into power if we continue to mourn for 4 or 5 years. For ZANU-PF, they may never develop the country if they continue to celebrate for 5 years. We should not mourn. I never mourn even for a day. I don't. Even at a personal level, if something bad happens to me, something has happened that I don't worry about it for more than a minute. I don't. I worry about what is it that I should do to get me myself out of this.
We saw at the inauguration, the former Vice President Joyce Mujuri joined. We also saw the former Vice President ousted in the coup. Mpekezela Mpoko was there. The wife of the ousted president and late former President Robert Mugabe, Grace, was there. Is this a show of unity and of people coming together to build a better Zimbabwe?
It's possible. I think 50% it is a show of unity, but the unity more being driven by the people in power at the moment, to make sure that these people don't work against them outside. But it's also evidence that maybe we are becoming human beings again as Zimbabweans. We are following Ubuntu now. We are following UNU now. Because you see, we should not become arch enemies because someone fell out of favor with you. You didn't agree on a particular direction in which your party or country should take. The best you can do is to put that person aside. But what I would do myself, if I think the person is intelligent, but we are disagreeing, I will still keep him around me, because the disagreement is the source of your strength and of your future strategies. Because someone who agrees with you does not give you a new line of thought. But if someone disagrees with you, you begin to question even your own strategy, and then beef it up. But I think we are becoming human again, whether we like it or not.
You were also invited to the inauguration. Did you go?
I don't know if I was invited because I was out. I was out of contact. No one could contact me where I was. Immediately after casting... No, I wasn't mourning. I was strategizing for the next 5 years. We were sitting down as a team and saying, what is our next move? That's why we went out. We wanted to be away from this office where no one could distract us, where nothing could distract us. Very few people could contact us by phone. It was to create a strategy.
If you had received the invitation, would you have gone?
I would have gone, because there is no reason why one should not go. If I had received the invitation, and I'm informed it was written, but I think they couldn't get hold of us. Someone told me, I saw your invitation. I would have gone. You should always go, because it's to your benefit. If you are going to run this country one day, there are certain things that are standard, that are done on an inauguration day. You should also learn those things. How is this done? How do they do this? Because you need to prepare yourself for governance. You need to prepare yourself to be president. So if you can attend those functions, please do. Even if it's for the purpose of learning how to remove that guy from power, go, because that's positive. If you think your views about the development of the country are right, then knowing how to get someone out of the way is a good thing. So you should always go. And some time to show Ubuntu. I am not aggrieved. I knew when we started that we were not going to get into power, because we didn't do much. We didn't hold any rally at all. We simply talked to a few people in almost every... I personally didn't manage to visit some provinces, like Mash East, for example. I didn't manage to visit it. I was surprised by my vote, though small. Mashingo, for example, I didn't manage to make a notable visit in Mashingo. I only went as far as Chirez. But I was surprised with the vote from Mashingo. So you can see it gives me great courage to go forward, because this happened without me going anywhere. But I had people working there. But it also gives me confidence in the people, the few. Like, for example, in Martinot, the people that I actually tasked to work were not more than 4. In Mashingo, there were not more than 3. In the Midlands, there was only 1 man that I asked to work in the Midlands. And I said, then look for others that can work with you. Our second largest voice was from the Midlands.
You were handpicking people?
No. They first of all brought people. Initially we said, look for leaders yourselves. They looked for leaders. And these are the few who remained, who showed commitment after our first meetings. So I then said to them, don't mourn about the people who are no longer coming to meetings. Don't worry about the people who don't come to meetings when you call for meetings. They are not ever meant to be at those meetings.
So those who feel that this election was stolen from them, and in this case, Nelson Chamisa, would you think that it would have been important for them to go to the inauguration if they had been?
Yes, it is very important for Chamisa, because if he's going to be president of this country one day, that's what you would expect of those people that he has defeated. Because the fight between protagonists should not start on the first day. No. It's on the electoral field. So any other event that takes place in this country, we should join hands. It's for the good of the country. It's like soccer. You get a penalty against you that you think is unfair, but you shake the ref's hand at the end. You embrace each other at the end. But you are still aggrieved when you go home. That was not supposed to be a penalty. It should be the same in politics. It's not that I am not aggrieved. I am aggrieved because you can imagine the fear that was put in people when one of my guys had his hand deeply cut, and by a person from ZANU-PF, because the guy was wearing ZANU-PF regalia, and he was saying in Chinhoyi, ZANU-PF does not want people, new people, displaying their posters. He was shouting. So we knew he was a ZANU-PF guy. Right? But we are happy he was arrested and is behind bars. You see, if we take those things very seriously at the top, then we have a problem running
But
this
someone
country.
could have died, and you don't want to take that seriously.
No. I'm saying at the top.
Yes.
If you are the president or the candidate for your party, and you don't attend a national event because of a man who was killed, the reason why you are attending that event is that you can tell the president that he should attend to issues like that. Because you cannot, just as a candidate, you cannot even make sure that...
How will the family of those who would have died at the hands of such...
If the president is aware, I would expect him to invite them to State House. Because you see what?
But that's not it.
Yes, but I am talking about how things should be done. Mm-hmm. If he is not doing that, because if you really know...
so how do you soup with people of that caliber?
You are not assuming, you are simply attending a national event.
7 people were killed on August 1 in the elections in 2018.
In 2018? You mean those ones after the elections?
Yes.
No, those ones...
There's been no apology. There's been no compensation from the state. These people were shot and killed.
What did the Commission of Inquiry say?
It spoke about the things that I'm talking about, compensation. It spoke about bringing those who...
Yeah, but when you talk about... Yeah.
So how as a leader do you...
But you know, the person who did that, who should have been brought to book, I don't think he's the soldiers. I think he's the president. I've said this before. I don't know whether it was on your station here. You see, when something like that happens, when soldiers are sent out to do a duty and they kill someone, there are 2 people who should be held accountable. If the guy shot without an order from his command, he should be held accountable. If the commander sent people irresponsibly, and the commander is the president, he's the one who should be held accountable. Maybe the people of Zimbabwe have, and they found that he was not guilty enough because they voted for him. That's what we should be talking to people about when we are campaigning out there. These are issues that we should have raised, and I did raise them. That's why I continue to say the president must be held accountable for these things, not the soldiers.
Why? Because you were once a soldier?
No, because you see, soldiers are there to serve a government, and they are there to receive orders from a government. And they cannot say no, because imagine I am your commander, and you are the president, and you ask me to go on an assignment to Mozambique, and I say no. Do you have power anymore? No. And if I start saying no to you as a president, I'll say to the next one, and it becomes a culture. Soldiers are supposed to listen to orders, but they make their sentiments known to the president that we don't think this should happen. And the president says we should go. Just like the American army, when it went to Iraq, we now read that a lot of the soldiers were saying no. A lot of the people, even around Bush, were saying no, your report for going to war is false. But they went because the commander had said go. That's how a country becomes normal, when soldiers don't question authority. When you allow soldiers to question authority consistently or even once, you are creating anarchy in a country.
What happens when the soldiers become the authority?
Then you have a problem.
Jonathan Moyo argues that there is nothing that is called SANU-PF that exists. In fact, the soldiers are the authority.
I don't agree with him. You see, because he does not, I don't think he understands this, what I've just explained, that soldiers cannot openly question. What we need to do...
They questioned President Robert Gabriel Mugabe and removed him from power.
No, they did not question him. Because if we agree by what we read, it's Mnangagwa who questioned him. They questioned him as ZANU-PF members. Remember, they were members of the Politburo.
And how did the army come into play? Because it is the army that removed him.
No.
There were tanks on the streets.
Tanks will always be there. Because what was announced first, I want you to see, even if they were responsible, but I want to see you to see how clever they were. Or assuming they were responsible. They did not go into the streets before people moved in.
No, they were the first to go into the streets.
People had started touting at certain corners first. If you follow exactly what happened.
I covered this.
Yes, but you covered.
Extensively.
Yeah.
And what started was the statement on ZTV. And people only followed on the street in the back of soldiers. In fact, in first instance, people did not want to go.
But before the statement, if you had traveled during the evening, you would have seen that people were already gathered. But maybe these were ZANU-PF people. I think they were, right? People had already started gathering, which means the world had filtered somehow. The majority, yes, flooded after the statement. But people had already been stationed in various parts of Harare and of showing their displeasure. Remember, the displeasure was also said to be coming from the people, because people in various provinces had started to show the same displeasure by virtue of statements, if you go back. I want you to look at how that thing developed. And when you write your book, don't start at the time the announcement was made. Go to the statements before the announcement. The dissatisfaction that was being reported, and I think...
Before the announcement,
yes,
before soldiers moved on,
it was not...
people gathered at ZANU-PF headquarters in their thousands.
Yes.
Celebrating the departure.
Before?
The departure of then Vice President Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa. The same people who were gathered
before Mugabe's departure. They also did the same thing. Yes. But that's the political side of things. But I am saying, when you look at the strategic side, even maybe the gathering might have been a smokescreen. You need to then talk to someone who was actually involved.
Jonathan Moyo was involved, and he says this, that it is the army that is behind power.
No, when you are going to...
Do you remember the straight jacket statement that was issued by General Jinawashe?
I remember, and that statement could be said by anyone, even in America. And they have said it in other parts of the world. Every office of president, anywhere in the world, is a straight jacket. Why? Because you must defend the sovereignty of the nation. That's why Obama spoke about what he said, changing the lives of black people. They became worse during his time. Because once you are in that office, you see more than when you are outside. You see who is in charge and who is not.
Why should people believe in you, President Mubaiwa, if you don't think that this nation can be led by a president who will change things for the better of the people and not the straitjacket?
One is because of my knowledge of the army, to say if you focus on the army and say they are the reasons why someone stays in power, then you don't have to contest. If I believe I can get into power and the army will support me, because they will always support someone. But if I start by losing heart and said, I only need the support of the army in order to govern, you are making a mistake.
Should the army support the president, or should support the constitution of the country and the people?
That's how they support the president, because when you are president, that's how you are in the constitution. They are supporting. When I say they should support the president in power, because that's what the constitution says. They support the constitution. That's why I say they cannot argue with a president, a sitting president. They cannot, even publicly. But I know behind doors, they do. Every day. They tell each other the way. So when the president makes a statement, don't think he has just come out of his head, especially the one that is prepared. Right? Not the one that is said outside the prepared statement. Most prepared statements are well structured. They make sense. It's because you cannot go and make a statement about the state of this country, the state of the nation address, without consulting the army, without consulting the police. Because how do you know the state of the nation without talking to those people? They are the people who know what this country looks like. So they always participate. Every day they advise the president. In fact, they are the first line of advisors for a president. Because what makes a nation is national security. Not necessarily the one the army stands for, but the army stands for every aspect of national security, whether it's agriculture, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's health. The army stands for that in every part of the world. And that's what most of our people don't know. The army stands for every aspect of our economy, of our nation, because they stand for national security. That's why when there's a strike at Parenyatwa Hospital, the first people to arrive to help are medical doctors from the army. Because they must keep, for that period, keep the state operating at a minimum level. When there is a strike anywhere, or when there is a breakdown of service anywhere, you see the army coming in. When there are floods everywhere, you see the army going in with their helicopters. They stand for national security, not in terms of your physical, because you have been invaded. That, to me, that's 30% to 40% of the national security. The bulk of national security has nothing to do with arms of war. And that's what they stand for. And we need to understand that, so that we appreciate how they work. And where you should see them, where you can see them. Even in America, you don't see a department that goes without...
So national security would involve shooting people in the streets?
No.
National security...
If you are shooting people because you want to protect national security, yes. But you see, I don't know what security was being... I don't know. I don't. You see, because when there is a war, or when there is an uprising in Harare, if you are president, you ask the army to move in. But you are not shooting people because you are trying to protect the property of people around them.
What's the job of the police?
No, even if you go to Britain or to America, the police go to where they can manage. And this is real in every book. I'm saying read the SOPs of any nation. There is a limit to which, if we go to America, for example.
But the Motlanthe Commission was very clear that there was unproportionate force that was used.
Yes, unproportionate.
And that the
which means that there is a proportion.
The army was not even supposed to be there
in
the first place.
In this case, it was an isolated place. So I can understand why Motlanthe said that. Because it's like there is something happening at a mine in Bindura. Why do you bring the army there? That's why I agree with the Motlanthe Commission. But when it's happening in a built-up area like Harare, there is no way you can keep out the army. You cannot. But if it's like that was in an isolated place out there.
President Robert Gabriel Mugabe, in all his years, has never used the army to quash demonstrations.
Yeah. Never. Yeah, he never used. But that's why I take you back to the president. What you should question is the wisdom of the president. That's why I'm always saying people are afraid to point the finger at the right person. No one ever pointed the finger at the president at that time. Why? I want you to go back to every opposition leader who spoke. They never pointed their finger at the president. The president is the first person you must question. That's why in America you go to Congress and the president must come and explain why he's sending people to Iraq or to anywhere. Don't start with the commander of the army. You are starting at the wrong place. Don't start with a soldier.
So you're saying the president did not have wisdom at that point?
The president always lacks wisdom. That's why he needs advisors. If you assume you have got wisdom every day, you will find no reason to call someone to advise you. So you assume that I don't have the full...
So then people were right to question the advisors?
No.
But
they are not questioning that. They didn't question...
Because if you say the president lacks wisdom, then you should then...
I didn't say the president lacks wisdom. I said maybe he did. He did lack it. But whatever he saw is what he should question as a leader of opposition. That's what I'm saying. I am talking about the opposition here. They talked about the wrong things. Let's not leave the guy who should be roasted. It's me as a leader of the opposition when things happen. Am I pointing my finger at the... Because if I'm pointing my finger at the wrong object, it means I'm unable to run this country. So the person you should analyze is the leader of the opposition. I am saying the opposition should have gone to the president. Parliament should have questioned the president. You get my point? Especially Parliament. The Senate should have done the same thing.
How do they do it when the majority...
It's not about the majority, it's about what's right and what's wrong. In a normal country.
In Zimbabwe?
Yeah, we have seen people there, although they are always in the minority, people from ZANU-PF, we have seen things that are against what ZANU-PF people...
And they are recalled from parliament?
No, ZANU-PF has never...
Killer Zivu was recalled?
No, Killer Zivu, I want to leave that issue because it's an interview on its own. You need to see what someone was called for. It had nothing to do with him questioning something in the parliament. Killer Zivu was speaking outside parliament most of the time. So there is a difference. That's why you are immune if you speak in parliament. If you say it outside...
But there is a whipping system in parliament. In this country.
No, but that is not for me to answer. That's for Zivu to answer.
You are talking about it.
No.
So you've
no. I am saying when you are talking about Zivu, he is the person you should be asking. To say there is a whipping system, why didn't you use it?
No, there's a whipping system that stops him from speaking out.
No, that whipping system, you are not just being whipped to go in the wrong direction. It's like when people hear of the word whipping, they think it's always about doing bad things. No, it's also for the good things. That's why to my children, when I talk about peer pressure is not just about your son being forced to do things by his friends. It's also about him being forced to do good things. Because peer pressure can be positive or negative. But we always look at the negative side. Once we do that, we are not governing well. You get the point? It happens both ways. We can use it for positive results, peer pressure. But we normally see the negative because the good things are never written about. But there are so many good things happening out of peer pressure.
We are running out of time.
Yes.
We're talking about the way forward. I would want you to just, in just 2 minutes, under 2 minutes, to talk to me about the way forward.
Maybe 5. Yeah. For us, when we went out, we were strategizing. The way forward for us, we know, the people now know the name Engineer Mubaiwa everywhere in the country. We now know people know NPC. So we are starting now to build our party. We have already started. In fact, we are almost done in Martinos.
You went into an election without a party?
No, we had a party. But as I said from the start, I didn't have the leaders that I think we needed to have. Now we need to get the leaders that are committed, and we now know them, as I said from the start. So we are now approaching those people to say, now let's build our structures to the full. Structures are not built over a year or 2 years. You need at least 2 years, in my own opinion, to build a structure. Even ZANU-PF structure is not full today, because of leadership deficiencies. But they are not deficient as such. Maybe our structures are too big. We need to streamline them. In our case, we have streamlined our structures. Like I am saying, every district must have at most 12 people. Every district, which means we are talking about 12 times 70 maximum, as your top leaders, which means every ward is covered, every constituency is covered, every district is covered, and the country is covered. You get my point? So, because it was our launch campaign to say we are introducing ourselves into politics. And when people have shown the interest that they have shown, now we are moving ahead. We are starting to work for 2028 today. We have already started. And I have said, we are starting in every province, but the first province that has come out and said, we are ready, is Matabeleland North. And I will be there on the 6th or 7th to look at the leadership. And then we move forward. I will then go to every province. And by the end of the year, I must have visited every province to see the leadership that it has at the district level. You don't need the huge structures. You need the others can then come.
So you're saying the National People's Congress is not going to be a party that rocks up a few months before elections?
This was just our beginning. In fact, we said in our resolution, this is the launch of our party, this election. And the result that we'll get will tell us whether we should move forward or not, whether people can believe us. We now know people can believe us because a lot of people have come. Immediately after they saw my name on the nomination form, we had more people from Machi Central than the leaders we had in that province to come and say, why didn't you tell us? Let's move. And they are the ones who actually campaigned. Even my campaign team was made up of people who were not members of the party, who were surprised at my nomination and came and said, we are moving, we don't need any cent. And they moved the whole of Harare. And they also went to other provinces. So I knew that if my name is right, if our vision is right, then we can get leaders. You can't get leaders by just going out and you think you are angry and others can follow you. No.
What do you think the next 5 years looks like for people of Zimbabwe?
They are going to be very tough. But depending on how the president is going to structure his government, depending on how the president is going to change the directory of government, because I know he is. He may not admit in public that what Chamisa said was right about something, but I can be sure that that guy will implement Chamisa's idea here and there. He may implement mine. That is, ever he listened to me. I'm a novice. I've just come in. I campaigned for 43 days without holding a rally. So I know he's going to take those ideas. So I expect positive things to happen, but I expect the pressures to continue to be exerted on his government, on himself as a person. You will also be worried about who takes over after him, because we know 2028 is his final year in power. So he's going to have a bit of pressure on him. So, but I expect generally the growth to be maybe half of what it should be. We are starting in 1980, our economy. So I expect huge growth percentages like 10, 12, 15%, if you are doing very well. But if you are talking about 4%, for a country that has gone back, then it's nothing. I expect it for them to be announcing the same figures, 2%, 3%, 4%, which is still too small. So I don't expect a dramatic improvement in the way the economy moves. But it will depend on how he structures his government. If we do the same interview after he has announced his government and so forth, I'll give you a full answer to that statement.
Do you think that ZANU-PF is capable of change after 43 years in power and what you have seen as a Zimbabwe?
You know, there's a guy called Lindblom. I think he's an American academic, long back. He has got this philosophy of disjointed incrementalism or incrementalism. ZANU-PF, I think, follows that prospect. There is disjointed. Yes, there is a small increase every time, but it's disjointed and sometimes it's too small. So I think for the stage where we are, where the country needs a huge leap forward, they are not capable. They are not the right party to lead us. But I'll be able to answer them. Maybe they will take that leap after he announces his government. But I don't think they are the right candidate. That's why I started my party. I had discovered, that's why we started this party. Because I had said, no, I don't think they will take us anywhere. And I still believe they may not take us somewhere. But I also believe there are people in there who may be hiding behind. Because sometimes when you've got a CEO, you may not bring your ideas forward because you know the CEO will crush you. I know there are many people in ZANU-PF probably who share my thoughts. There are many who share your thoughts, who share Chamisa's thoughts. And there are people in Chamisa's party who share my thoughts and so forth. Those things, those people can only come to the fore once the leadership at the core changes. And I'm hoping that the president is going to change his party and bring those people to the fore. He's going to change his method and continue to bring others from other parties to be able to work with him, even in government. Because there are people who don't support Mnangagwa in government as technocrats. I don't know whether they contribute fully or they don't. Because they are there everywhere in the army. The army does not entirely support. They are individuals. Yes, they are, as an army, they support government. But as individuals, they support their own political parties. And this is their right. And I am saying, I don't think ZANU-PF has done enough to bring confidence to capable people who can come to work with it.
And you say they are also not capable of doing that?
At this point, they have not been capable. That's why I'm saying I must wait until he announces his government.
We saw just at the end of President Emmerson Mnangagwa's first term of office, his second or his vice president, Kembo Mohadi, resigning over a sex scandal. Now, do you see a second vice president coming through, and who do you think it would be?
I think a vice president will come, but to be honest, I don't want to second guess myself. It can be anyone. But if they follow the protocol in terms of the unit agreement, then that person is going to Matebeleland. Immediately, the person that we know, all of us, is Obetumpov. I would hazard to say maybe it's Obetumpov. But it can be anyone. We don't know.
Could it be Mtulingwe?
I doubt very much, because Mtulingwe is not part of the ZAPU structure. That unit agreement follows the structure of ZAPU as it existed just before the unit accord. In fact, as it existed just before independence. That's why Mtiniri was being talked about and so on. And Mtuli is way outside that orbit. I can't see him being.
I want to thank you very much, Engineer Mubaiwa, for joining me and for sharing your thoughts. But before we go, maybe you could just look the people of Zimbabwe in the eye and give them a message from your heart moving forward. What is it that you want to say? Maybe in just a minute.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who voted for us. We got 1.2%. It's a good beginning. And what we can assure you, our next objective is probably to get to 15-20% or to get a majority. And we will want you to get us more people out there to support us. But what we have always said is what I'm going to say to you. We stand for development without boundaries. We stand for universal development. We stand for production everywhere in the country. And we think that's the only way our country can change. But the most important thing at this stage is to thank you for your vote. We came out number 3, and that's wonderful for a party that is still crawling, which means when we stand, when we start standing, and when we start walking, and when we start running, we will be in government. Let us start running by 2028 so that we can take over the governance system and structure in this country. Thank you very much for your support. I thank you.
I want to thank you very much for joining us on this, the Free Talk, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom. Now, we brought you the candidates before they went to election. We're bringing you the candidates again after the election to assess, to hear what they think about the election and how we can move it forward. This country, This is me, your host as usual, Dara B. And as usual, we bring you incisive discussions. We ask the questions that matter, and we allow the people of Zimbabwe to speak to each other and not through each other. We believe that dialogue is the best way for this nation to develop. We believe that a cross-pollination of ideas and a diversity of views is for the people of this country a better dream. Without hearing from each other, we might not get to the promised land. And I, your host as usual, Dara B, pledge that this platform will do exactly that for the people of Zimbabwe. A diversity of views, sharing of ideas, and talking to each other. This is Free Talk, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation for Freedom. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, more love.
Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer.
As always, it's wonderful.